Creamer Media's Mining Weekly is speaking to Robinson Ramaite, the interim CEO of Wescoal. Robinson, as interim CEO, what is your vision now for Wescoal?
What I do know is what the challenges are. Wescoal is a junior coal mining company with about 5 mining operations, focused mainly on supplying thermal coal to Eskom. This in a context where there are increasing environmental issues and a drive towards renewable energy and the need to reduce carbon emissions in the medium to long term. I mean, Eskom, the major electricity supplier here, is facing similar pressures from international funding institutions. The local banks are having equal pressures from international funding partners. We have seen a number of international banks, asset managers saying that they are no longer allocating any money into coal operations. And there I say that in some instances it even affects you personally, because you will have your bank calling you saying, Mr. Ramaite, we understand you are still in coal. This is of concern to us because we want to be seen to be promoting renewable energy. The reality of South Africa, however, is that coal is going to be with us for quite some time. It's a very big part of our energy mix. There is a drive towards improving our renewable energy and other forms of energy consumption. But coal will still be here with us. How long? We don't know. I'm guessing 2050 or somewhere thereabouts. So it still has quite some time to go, but this does put pressure on coal mining companies, particularly if you're in a listed environment, to say, well, how do you mitigate this pressure from the environmental lobby groups, but also how do you incorporate the need for genuine migration towards renewable energy. So I think this is one of the challenges that we're facing as Wescoal, and we have to respond to that. I'll come back to that in a bit to talk about the possibility of transforming ourselves into a broader energy company where coal just becomes one of the components. But the second major challenge for Wescoal is we are small. We don't have big institutional investors. We've got lots of mamas and papas. We are not seeing growth in our share price despite having had tremendous growth from a company that was just trading coal a few years ago to having moved now to around 10 million tons of supply of coal to Eskom. So there's been growth. There's been growth in EBITDA, just around R1 billion EBITDA at the moment. But we have this listed vehicle which is really not performing. It's undervalued quite drastically. We're about 500 million rands market cap, but with an underlying net present value somewhere around close to 3 billion rands. So one of the challenges from an interim CEO point of view is how do you unlock this value? Because shareholders who have been loyal to us over a period of time want to see that. And obviously linked to that is the fact that shareholder value must also come through in the form of dividends and any other measures that will help shareholders recognize value from the company. So these are the challenges that overall I'm facing. We are working through various proposals and assessing various scenarios, but it is more and more likely that we are going to go the route where we position ourselves as a broad energy company which is focused on energy generation across different areas, including renewables, maintaining a fair amount of coal because you can't just dump it, you've got to reduce it over time. So yeah, that's the sort of issues that we're busy going through at the moment.
And then on the bigger picture with Eskom, do you think it might be time now for some sort of major discussion to take place between the coal producers and Eskom to sort of work out the way forward for Eskom and the coal producers?
Yes, certainly. I mean, there's a lot of discussion now, particularly given the South 32 discussions, the Duba discussions around pricing and the State Capture Commission and Glencore. So a lot of these issues are now part of the public discourse. As South Africans, we also have a concern about increasing cost of electricity. I mean, we just got a 15% increase. That's quite hefty. So yes, I would think that certainly there's an opportunity for Eskom and coal producers to sit side by side and look at how can we jointly, both the junior producers like ours and the big producers like Exxaro, South 32, Siriti, and them to sit around the table and say, how can we help by putting our heads together to help Eskom have a much more sustainable coal pricing policy, because it's a major component, input component, into the current power stations. And in there, there's a number of issues that we will be interested in. Is a much more certain procurement framework, because opening mines is not an easy thing. You need a 3-year planning exercise just before you start opening a mine, which means Eskom should have committed, but then you should know what your pricing looks like, etc. So that conversation is important. You can't run coal procurement by short-term tenders. It just doesn't work. Mines have to be open. There must be environmental studies involved, and all those sort of issues. The second issue is transport and logistics. So transport and logistics at the moment is close to between 25 and 30% of the price of coal delivered to a power station. Now, if Eskom is interested in reducing costs, we've got to sit together and talk about this component, because we can start exploring issues together with Transnet about how can we use trains more efficiently. The clogging around power stations at the moment is something that not even the logistics providers are happy with. So you've got a very, very, very unproductive environment, because you also have this stop-start situation. So, today Kusile is working, 3 units are working, then next thing, breakdown. You've got a line of trucks there who are ready to deliver. Now, this power station can take. So there's a lot of issues which involve planning and so on that I think industry players will be involved in. And can assist Eskom with certain ideas. I guess the third issue will be some consistent pricing strategy. And this is part of the legacy of what was inherited from the previous leadership, where the pricing strategy from an Eskom point of view just it's not logical. So you could be supplying to the same power station, the other guy is being paid very high, rent per ton, 600, 650, and you being told, no, stay there at 450 or 500. So there's no consistent pricing strategy. My view certainly is that given that there are not that many players in the industry, this is something that can be resolved via a good conversation with Eskom, where we can help each other manage our challenges.
And it used to be ideal where the power stations were built closer to the mines, and we had the situation of a conveyor belt feeding the coal in, which seems to be ideal, but there has been more road transport now. And what sort of cost does that add?
So just to give an example, the one mine which we also got because of the difficulties between Eskom and the long-term coal contracts is Anot mine. As you know, at the height of these state capture issues, what happened is discussions between Eskom and Exxaro broke down rather, so they couldn't, Eskom decided not to continue with the Anot contract. Despite the fact that, by the way, given that it was a cost-plus mine, Eskom currently has just close to 1.6 to 2 billion rand of environmental liabilities. It must still service in that mine. So while they stopped the contract, they still left with the liability, which is on Eskom's books as we speak. But Anot has got a conveyor belt right through to Anot Power Station. So when they stopped that contract, they stopped the opportunity of using the conveyor belt. Resorted to trucking for whatever reason. There's no way it can be efficient. There is no way it cannot cost more. And fortunately, we are almost close now to concluding our discussions with Eskom to revive that. Well, one, to get a new contract for anode mine, and two, to revive that conveyor belt. The same can be said to many other things. I think this is part of the dynamic as well in the Seriti discussions. It speaks to this issue which I'm saying of logistics. But clearly the cost will be lower if you are using a conveyor belt straight to the power station.
So that is always the ideal. If you can do it, use it. If you've got it,
Exactly.
use it.
Okay.
And swinging now out of coal towards another commodity which you personally are involved in, and that is manganese, with United Manganese of the Kalahari. What is the state of play in the manganese sector?
There have been sort of 3-4 mines that have opened in addition to the traditional manganese suppliers we've always had, as in Asmang, Samanco, which is South 32 and Anglo. Since the liberalization there of those manganese coalfields, we've had Tsipi, part of which is listed in Australia. You've got ourselves, UMK, you've got Kudumani, and of course you've got Kalahari, which hopefully soon will kick off too. So that's quite a lot. I think we've moved from a couple of years ago around 4 million tons of exports to now close to 10 to 12 million tons, which is quite an expansion. We have not seen any adverse reaction from the market to increase production and increased exports from South Africa, so that in the last few years has been quite okay. We have seen rather improved performance by Transnet. So for example, whereas before manganese was only going to Port Elizabeth, former town known as city called Port Elizabeth, we're now also exporting via Saldanha, and that's on a price parity basis. We still don't have, we don't use trains for all our export. We still rail. We still go by road as well, sometimes via Durban, and that's, as you know, this manganese is coming from the Northern Cape. That area of Kathu is very far from everything, but it's an indication of the fact that demand continues to be very robust. Prices have gradually increased, although not quite back to 2008 levels where we were getting close to $10 per DMTU, but we are there around 5-6, which is very healthy. I think post-COVID, the major impact on the manganese export side in particular is the freight rates. We have seen quite a dramatic increase in freight rates, which probably have to do with the shipping companies trying to recover whatever they suffered, losses they suffered during the lockdown. But I would say that South African manganese industry is quite healthy. Exports are good. We still mainly focused on China as the major uptake. So when we do see reports of sustained economic growth in China, that means well for the manganese sector in South Africa.
That was Creamer Media's Mining Weekly, speaking to Robinson Ramaite, the interim CEO of Wescoal, who also gave us an update on his manganese interests.